very happy Christmas to you all, and welcome to this Wednesday reflection for the first Wednesday of Christmas. Today is the feast day of St Thomas Becket, murdered, martyred Archbishop of Canterbury, who in 1170, on this day, a mere 28 days after returning from exile in France, was brutally slain by knights of King Henry II in Canterbury Cathedral. Accounts of witnesses describe a ghastly and frenzied murder. Thomas Becket seems to have grown up as not the most likeable man and had a fondness for a lavish lifestyle. He was, however, an efficient and hard-working manager of affairs of state and became trusted by Henry II as his Lord Chancellor. Nominated by the King to be Archbishop of Canterbury on the death of Theobald of Bec, it was his administrative and management skills that Henry II sought, so that the Church and its wealth and influence in England would fall under the monarch's reach. The King obviously did not foresee that Thomas, once Archbishop, would resist monarchical control of church matters. Did Thomas's encounter with the divine as a new priest and leader of the Church transform his belief as to who is Lord and King of all? We can't really say, but the dangers of making your earthly king wild with indignant anger at a perceived breach of trust and friendship was never going to end happily. The horror of the manner of Thomas's earthly ending in a place of sanctuary and sanctity has recent parallels in the life and death of St Oscar Romero of El Salvador. He was initially seen as a supporter of a conservative and suppressive government. As Archbishop of San Salvador, however, Oscar Romero saw earthly regimes as wanting far too much for God to be on their side, rather than as Romero described, that people of whatever leaning should feel the Church and through the example of Jesus walk by the will of God and his love. It seems when God is at work and his merciful ways encounter imperfect souls, previous allies of the not so good are changed to fight for a church which speaks truth and justice and obedience to God alone. On this feast day of the martyrdom of St Thomas Becket of Canterbury, we are being asked to reflect on what our faith demands of us. Is our faith a superficial icing sugar that sees our purpose as to do what we will and ask for God's blessing as our justification? Or is our faith deep into the mystery and majesty of God, where his will is our desire and pleasure, however messed up we may be by this fallen world? Where the worldly and the divine clash, who is Lord and King of all? St Thomas Becket and St Oscar Romero, in their stance to uphold the Church above all, to the point of finding enemies that would brutally slay them, defines there is an ultimate sacrifice, defined by a God of love murdered on the cross, which triumphs against narrow pride that makes for unsavoury abuse of power and position. We often talk of the humility and blessedness of God's servants. Sometimes, however, those servants need to possess a rod of iron resolve to uphold God's loving purpose and will when the world dances to a different tune, which is out of tune with the divine and eternal order of creation. To be compassionate as Christians we try so hard to be confronters of injustice and abuse of power which might hurt us is not a zone we like to enter. We can so revere the martyrs of the Church, but is our faith such that we would follow in their footsteps? And the music for this Wednesday's reflection is Orlando Gibbons' Anthem. Drop, drop, slow tears.